So this came out of nowhere. Remember how we speculated what these obviously Lunari beats could be? Well, it turns out they were Lunari. I was in the middle of editing the Legends of Runeterra cards interactions when I noticed that Riot dropped a story for the new champion. No, not Senna, we already got another one. Not only that, but they also released a story for Karma, and a story of Silas in Freljord. A story that also features Vrina, a character newly introduced with Legends of Runeterra. This makes me think that Legends of Runeterra probably set up a lot more future stories than we think. But anyway, today we need to resist the urge to talk about this awesome art. And we need to focus on the new champion, which is going to be a bit unique because it features two main characters. And for the first time in a very long time, it is not a story where one dies and the other wants to avenge them. This story is actually far cooler. So without further ado, let's have a look at the story of the newest champion, Aphelios, the weapon of the faithful. Since we don't know what they look like in game yet, I will use our classic black silhouettes instead. At the very beginning, the story reveals that besides your ordinary spirits or beings touched by magic, the moon itself also crosses over into the spirit realm. Although in the spirit realm, the moon has a slightly different orbit from the physical one. Our main characters, Aphelios and his twin sister Alun, not to be confused with Alun, were born during a rare lunar convergence, when the physical moon was eclipsed by its reflection in the spirit realm. Because of this, Aphelios and Alun were celebrated as children of destiny by the Targonian Lunari. And indeed it was obvious that fate marked both children. But interestingly enough, each child was touched by one half of the moon. Aphelios was gifted with physical strength, like the moon made out of stone. But Alun was gifted with magical power, like the spiritual reflection of the moon. Both of them were zealously devoted to the Lunari faith, which was built on mystery, reflection and discovery. And both embraced darkness, not just out of belief, but because they had to stay safe. You see, these were the times when the Solari ruled Targon. They were present times. And the Solari saw the Lunari as heretics, and they drove them into hiding until most forgot the Lunari ever existed. We don't know the real reason why the Solari did this, but it is hinted that it might have been because the current astronomical phase favored the sun. And so everything pointed towards the sun being the true source of life, while it seemed like the moon only leached off of it. Either way, these were dark times for the Lunari, who were forced to live in shadows, often hiding in temples and caves far away from Solari's sight. Soon, Aphelios started feeling the pressure of being an example to all the other Lunari, so he practiced tirelessly with mystical moonstone blades, spilling his own blood during his training, so that he could spill the blood of their enemies to protect their faith. In their isolation from the rest of Mount Targon, Aphelios didn't seek out friendships, and instead he bonded deeply with his sister. Over time, as Aphelios was sent on increasingly dangerous missions to protect the Lunari, Alun trained separately as a seer. She used her luminous magic to reveal pathways and truths hidden by the moon's light. And in time, her training required her to leave the temple where they lived. This left Aphelios alone, and in his mind, vulnerable. Desperate for purpose, he undertook a ceremonial journey into darkness, where Lunari were set to discover their paths, their purpose, or as they call it, their orbits. During this ceremonial journey, he followed the moon's light to a pool, where rare nocturne flowers bloomed beneath the water's surface. The flowers were poisonous, but they could be distilled into a liquid that had its own special properties. Properties that revealed Aphelios' orbit. Once Aphelios drank this purified essence of Noctum, he felt so much pain it numbed him to everything else. While this made him able to ignore pain during battle, every time he drank it, the numbness would also make him unable to speak, rendering him completely mute. Meanwhile, as Aphelios was undertaking his spiritual journey into darkness, the moon began to shift. Soon, an ancient temple known as the mara-sa-magnum began phasing in from the spirit realm for the first time in centuries. And with it, Lunari from across the mountain gathered, emerging from hiding to witness the balance of power shift, as celestial cycles in the heavens turned. No longer would the Solari have the advantage. Each time the mara-sa-magnum appeared, the fortress would allow only one person, a wielder of magic, to enter. And after that it would phase out back into the spirit realm again. This time, the person who was accepted inside was Alun. Her own orbit guided her to the temple. Unexpectedly, Aphelios, albeit being the person who never asks for anything, requested to witness Elune entering the temple. But as the event passed, and the fortress slowly phased through the veil into the spirit realm, in a beautiful display of lunar magic, a harsher radiance filled the night. It turns out, all those spectacular lights revealed the Lunari to the rest of Mount Targon. And despite the celestial cycles turning in their favor, the Lunari were discovered by their enemies. Moments later, an army of Solari descended upon them. The Lunari stood no chance against the purging fire and steel of the Solari. Even Aphelios, who was present because he wanted to witness his sister completing her journey, was beaten. His moonstone blades shattered on the ground, blood spilling from his lips as he reached for the essence of Noctum. Meanwhile, as the battle raged, Elune ran deeply into the temple, which was still slowly phasing into the spirit realm, and when she reached the heart of that place, her full potential was unlocked. Outside, with the help of the Noctum, Aphelios numbed his mortal senses, pushing them aside and making room for something greater. The Noctum also made him able to feel the greater power of Elune embrace him from within the fortress. Not only could he hear her voice, but Elune was also able to push magic into his hands, repairing his broken blades with solid moonstone. The two siblings now reflected the two halves of the moon itself, combining the physical and the spirit realms. Aphelios' skill and Elune's magic united. Together they made sure those attacking Solari would not live to see the sun again. After the battle was over, with her newfound power, Elune pushed the temple together with herself back into the spirit realm, where the mara-sa-magnum would remain safe from the Solari. From inside, amplified by the temple's focusing power, Elune was able to project her magic anywhere, as long as there was a focus point. Something like the Noctum essence that was coursing through Aphelios' veins. It was only now that they both understood their destiny. Aphelios would hollow himself out with pain, but would become a conduit for the moon's power. Elune would live alone, isolated in her fortress, but she would guide her brother, able to see through his eyes. Together they were the weapon the Lunari needed to endure, bound by pain and sacrifice. Only apart could they be together, their souls brushing across the veil, distant yet impossibly close, converging into something they could not understand. To protect the Lunari survivors of the attack who retreated back into the shadows of the mountain, Aphelios' training as an assassin has been given reach by Elune's magic. Originally, he trained with lunar blades, but Elune's magic was able to give him a wider arsenal, be it different moonstone melee weapons, or even some ranged alternatives. Now that the power balance of Targon is shifting, and the Solari know the Lunari still endure, Aphelios and Elune are needed more than ever. And that was the story of the new champion, or champions. It's supposed to be just Aphelios, but we know it is not just Aphelios. Either way, the story is pretty cool because it actually progresses the universe forward. These stories are taking place in present times. Right now, we know that the Solari ruled the mountain, and the Lunari are pretty much a forgotten faith. You can only really find out about the Lunari by a mistake. But what is awesome about this story is that it explains why they were forgotten. It seems like the heavens have these celestial cycles, and these are what determines who has the power on Targon. Sometimes the cycles can favor the sun, for example, that seems to be happening now, and sometimes the cycles favor the moon, which is where the story seems to be going. All this time the Solari were in power, but now the Lunari are coming back. Now, interestingly enough, the properties of the Lunari magic underline the entire Lunari story. Aphelios revealed that the Lunari were not entirely gone. They were just hiding in the shadows of the mountain. Partially, they were able to do this because the Lunari magic is deeply connected to the spirit realm. In fact, it seems like the light of the moon seems to be phasing things into the spirit realm. That's why that massive fortress was able to stay hidden. That's why the moon has its own reflection in the spirit realm. And I believe that's how the Lunari were able to survive. They were using lunar magic to conceal themselves. And this brings up some interesting theories. You might be aware of the theory that as the sun created the Ascended, because the moon is the counterpart to the sun, that is why the Moonstalkers were the ones who helped banish the Darkin. The sun created them, and the moon banished them. But this story makes that theory even stronger. Because we know that the moon can phase things into the spirit realm, the banishing of the Darkin makes a bit more sense. in the story The Twilight of the Gods, when the Chalikar, which is Sivir's blade, was empowered by the moon, which Misha, the previous aspect of Twilight, used to banish the Darkin. It now makes sense, because with the power of the moon, they could turn the physical bodies of the Darkin into their spiritual version, and then banish their souls inside the weapons. This sounds crazy, but we know that Riot is planning these things ahead, so it's more like a cool detail than a theory. Then again, I might also be completely wrong. It happened before. Another cool detail is Diana. In her story, she found the Lunari faith by a mistake. She ventured into a cave where she found a forgotten temple, and that temple was devoted to the Lunari. That awfully lot reminds me of the Orbit, which was mentioned at the beginning. Orbit is Lunari term for fate, and Diana's orbit was to become the aspect. But interestingly enough, her journey into this forgotten temple was very similar to Aphelios' journey into the darkness, which is that ceremonial journey where one finds their purpose, aka their orbit. So I believe Diana became an aspect during that ceremonial journey. Last thing to note is the champion himself, Aphelios. Let me make a bold prediction as to what he will do in game. Aphelios will be an assassin. He will have your classic agile abilities like Talon, but he will also be able to swap weapons, which will change his range. But more importantly, because we know that he's able to drink Noctum, which essentially makes him a puppet for his sister, and it makes him mute, I believe that when Aphelios uses his ultimate, he's going to drink Noctum, and suddenly his in-game voice will change to his sister's voice. Because he can't speak, but his sister can speak through him. As to what that ultimate will actually do, I am not entirely sure. It is probably going to be something that will mitigate damage, because Aphelios is able to ignore pain under the effect of Noctum. But his weapons should also get upgraded, because at that point Alun would enhance them with magic. It sounds weird, but if we have a look at the past, the story usually reveals what the champion is able to do. Now let me end this video with one interesting fact. Riot's world building is starting to pay off. Because did you notice that for the first time ever, we got a champion that is an inhabitant of Mount Targon, but that is not an aspect. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.